Okay, so today we're going to learn how to make a 3-hole stitched drawing sketchbook. It could be a journal, it could be a sketchbook, it can be your poetry station for yourself where you're writing your own poems in there. It can be a word collecting journal. It could be just a place where you just draw anything you want. Here's how you do it, step by step. It's pretty easy. Let me show you. You will need these tools. You will need a cover for your journal. And I'm just using a plain cardstock. It's a little bit thicker than regular paper. You can hear it. And you're going to need some pages for your book. I found some old yellow paper I had in a file folder in my garage, so that's what I'm using. So use any kind of paper you have. Any size will work. I'm just using 8.5 by 11. And then you'll need a needle. So you can have a needle. And if you don't have an awl, which I'll show you what that is, it's spelled A-W-L, and it's a bookmaker's tool. It's a super sharp, very, very sharp tool for making holes in your books. So I always stick it in a cork so that it doesn't hurt anybody. If you don't have an awl, you could use a thicker needle, or you could use this needle too if your pages aren't that thick. So you could use the needle if you don't have an awl. All right, you can do that. You're going to need some thread. Now, if you don't have wax thread, don't worry about it. Get some yarn, get some thread, some thicker thread if you can find some. Anything will work, some twine, you know, anything you have lying around. So don't get hung up that it has to be waxed thread. It doesn't have to be. We don't all have all these items at our houses right now, and we can't order them sometimes. So don't worry about that. Okay, and then you're going to need either a bone folder or a ruler. A ruler works really well, or you could use the back of a knife. You could use, you know, anything that would, you know, smooth out your pages. So I'll show you how to use that in a second. Okay, the first step is you're going to fold your cover and use your bone folder to make your folds crisp. So you take your paper, fold it in half, and this is where your bone folder comes in handy by making a nice sharp crease. Okay, then you take your pages. I've already folded them, but I'll show you again how you do it. You take your pages, however many you want. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 4, I have 20 pages to be drawing in my journal. So I made a 20-page journal. So then I bone folder it, or I can use the back of a ruler. It works perfectly well. And now here comes the eyeballing of where you're going to put your holes. Okay, you're going to nest your journal pages inside your cover like this. You're going to open up your cover and you're going to nest in your signature. This is called a signature. You have a 5-page signature, and you're going to put it inside your cover. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your awl or your needle and you're going to poke a hole through the whole thing, right in the middle. So you can just say, where is the middle? And I think it's about right here. And you poke a nice hole right in the center. Okay, and then I go about 1 inch from each end of my paper. So, and if I don't know what 1 inch is, I take my knuckle of my finger and I go like that. And it's about that much from the edge. I'm eyeballing it. I'm not being super precise, but it doesn't really matter if you're precise or not. About 1 inch from the end. And even if I took my ruler and I wanted to measure 1 inch, yep, it's about 1 inch. Isn't that crazy? This is a little bit more than 1 inch, about 1.5 inches. But it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to thread your needle. And so I'm going to take my thread. If you happen to have wax thread, here's a little tip on making your end of your thread very flat so you can stick it through your needle. Sometimes this is a little frustrating when you thread your needle. And then I just pull it down about 2 inches and then leave it like that. I never really tie it off because it's too much work to take it off of the needle. I'm just careful when I'm putting my needle through my paper. And then what I do is I am going to decide whether or not I want the tied off part to be on the inside or if I want the tied off part to be on the outside. I think for today we're going to do tie it off on the inside. I like it when it's tied off on the inside. So I put my needle through the center hole and then I pull it until I get about 2 inches left of the thread, and I leave it there just like that. I let it just stay there, and I'm careful. Then I go back onto the cover of my book, and it doesn't matter which hole you go through next. You can choose over here or you can choose over here. It just doesn't matter. I'm going to choose this way, and I'm going to poke it through, and you'll see on the inside I'm going to bring my needle through, and then I double check on the back to see if it's pulled tightly. I don't want it super loose on the outside of my book. As you can see, I have one piece of my thread right there. Then my next step is to go back through the center hole. So I'm careful, just poke it through the center. And then what I do is I hold this thread right here so it doesn't come out. And now, as you can see right here, I've got the thread right in the middle. If you make a mistake, guess what you can do? You can pull the whole thing out and start over again. Oh my gosh, what next? Oh, I messed up. I pulled it too hard. Okay, let's start it again. It's not that hard with sewing. That's the cool thing about sewing, is you can pull your thread all the way out and start it again. In through the center, leave about 2 inches. I'm going to put my needle through the top up here, pull it, check it. Now I'm going to put it again through the center hole, and I'm going to pull it a little bit tight right here. Now I see that there's an extra hole left. Oh, that's where my needle should go. So I put my needle through there, and now I look at my spine. My spine has 2 long threads on it and 3 holes, 1, 2, and 3. I look on the inside of my book, and I've got this one in the center hanging there, and now I've got this part with my needle. This is where I take my needle off, and now what I'm going to do is tie it off in the center. I'm going to tie it off right here in the middle of my book. I'm not going to tie it off over here. I'm going to tie it off in the center, and I can turn my paper a little bit, and then I pull it tightly toward the center hole. What I'm doing, and then I can press it down with my finger like that. If you don't have wax thread, have somebody help you by putting their finger right there. Then you can tie around their finger, and it's a little bit easier like that. Okay, but if you have wax thread, it just stays there. You just pull it, double check it to make sure that it's nice and tight on the back before you tie your loop, I'm making it nice and tight. I press it down and I cinch it just like that. And then I take my scissors, I trim it off in the center, not too far in. And now, as you can see, my book is tightly secured, and I have made my own 3-hole 2-stitch journal. And I'm very happy. I get to draw now. So I am so excited that I can draw and write my poems right here in this book. Here's a variation. If you want to take some paper from, say, a paper book like this that you can get at a craft store like Michael's or Joann's or any of those, you could use this paper too. And what you can do is you can start sewing around the edges of your book and make it really beautiful if you'd like to do that. And you can put a little pocket in here if you want, use some glue stick. So with these journals, I like the way it looks on the inside with the colorful paper. So you can do it that way. This is some wallpaper sample that I found. And so I used some black paper on the inside, and I sewed around the edges with my thread, just poked some holes and sewed all the way around it. Super fun and pretty easy, and it's a very meditative thing to do as well. I hope you loved Aloud in the Library today. See you next time.